Welcome to Unmute Yourself, the podcast. I'm Nancy Medoff, author, speaker, and coach.
And I'm Beth Knaus, creative copywriter and the owner of That's a Spade Copywriting Services. We are done being polite and ready to get real about confidence, boundaries, and self-respect, both personally and in the workplace.
Beth and I first met when we collaborated on the best-selling communication handbook for women, Unmute Yourself and Speak Up to Stand Out. Now we are amplifying our message and taking it on the road with Unmute Yourself, the podcast. Warning, there may be, no, who are we kidding, will be some adult content. We have a bullshit button and we're not afraid to use it.
So buckle up, buttercups, because here we go.
And we're back. Hello.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It doesn't even feel like New Year anymore. Does it still feel like New Year's to you?
It's just weird. It's a little surreal. But last year went so fast, and I feel like here we are.
Yeah, I'm already over it. Like I'm already in February or March, I think.
Well, yes, and I think that the tricky thing is, for our global podsters, here in Massachusetts, it has been 20 degrees and it has been 60 degrees in a 10-day span. So we don't really know when it is for sure.
Definitely confusing to everybody. The animals, like I saw birds flying around this morning. I'm like, where are they going? Are they going south? Are they coming back? Like, what's happening?
It's going in circles.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So Beth, it's good to see you. So Podsters, Beth and I caught up for a few minutes before we jumped on the recording. And also, I think it's important that our Podsters know how your Christmas and New Year's or how your break in your New Year's was. How was it?
Oh, very, very low key, a lot of rest, a lot of no planning and no scheduling. And I felt like I really needed it. Like I thought, oh, tomorrow I'll get up and I'll do this, this, or this. And the next day I get up and I'd be like, nope, I am not feeling that yet. But it was great, really peaceful and nice.
Nice. I feel similar. So we traveled a little bit on Christmas. We actually traveled a lot. And that was great to catch up with old friends. It was awesome. And we had a great time. And we spent a lot of time in the car together, me and my husband, which, by the way, so I got this little game. It's a cube of cards and it's questions to ask your partner. They were really good. Really good. They were great. Yeah, they were awesome. So we got to spend a lot of quality time together. But what I found the best was that, like, from December 28th up until today, I'm hoping maybe till the end of the week because I'm not planning on working the rest of the week. Boy, did I need that downtime. It was good.
Yep.
It was good. And I came back recharged and ready to go, which is a good segue for the evolution of this particular recording of this podcast.
Yes.
Do you want to tell the podsters how this came to be?
Sure. Yeah. So today we are talking about choosing a word or words for the year or for the month, actually, which is a whole new concept we're going to get into. But we actually recorded one of these before the holiday break. And we were like, we're going to record it. We're going to be ahead. We're going to have it together. And going back and listening to it, we realized we didn't quite have it together. You know why? Because we needed a week of rest. Pretty much. But it just really didn't feel right. And, one of the things we're learning as we're on our podcast journey, Nancy and I, is that something that was tricky in this situation was it was December and we were talking as if it was January, but we really didn't. And I'm going to take full responsibility for that. I know we both did it, but I just could not wrap my head around talking about January when I just needed to get to the finish line of December.
Yeah. And also, we were talking about the word and your word for the year. And I'm in a very different place now than I was December 15th when we recorded it. Think about it. We were in the thick of everything. And my word has changed like 6 times since then, and it didn't feel authentic. And we both stand behind our authenticity. So we decided to go for it and re-record. So here we are talking about how to choose your word, what is your word. If you're not familiar with the concept, we'll do a quick intro, and using a word or words to guide you as your true north through 2023. Boom. So
Yes.
cool. So let's talk about maybe why we do it. So I choose in the past, for the past maybe 10 years, I've been choosing one word. This year, I'm going to explore the word of the month, and we'll get to that in a minute. Beth actually does it a little bit differently. And I'm going to ask you about that in a second. So I choose one word to help me engineer my life. So every morning when I journal, I ask myself, how do you want to feel today? So the word of the year is just that on kind of steroids. It's how do you want to feel? Who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? How do you want to live this coming year? And I struggled quite a bit. I still haven't chosen mine, and we'll get into that in a minute too. But I really, really struggled. And that's where we're at. So Beth, tell everybody what you do, because it's very different.
It
Not
is.
surprising because you blaze your own
Yes,
trail.
of course, because yeah, I like to be a little bit of a nonconformist. We know this, but I was tempted on this contrarian path by our friend Susan Finn, who a number of years ago, I'm going to go back maybe 5 years or so, and she said to me, "Do you know who Chris Brogan is?" And I can't even tell you what the guy does, to be honest. I did then know, but I haven't retained that information. But anyway, he was all about these three words and having three words instead of one. And for me, the purpose of that has evolved into just having these three words. It's like more of a process for me of like, okay, I have this word, and this word's going to help me get into this word, and
Mm.
that word's going to help me get into that word. And I usually try to choose things that are, it's like a flow a little bit. And I can use it personally, or I can use it professionally, and I can use it for my clients or for myself. So I just really like it. And I like having the three words because it's like a mantra. Like on days when I want to poke my eye out, I can chant my three words to myself.
I love it. Are you ready to share what they are?
I am absolutely. And I actually kept the words I think that we talked about last time. So my words are encourage, exposure, and allow.
Sorry, I'm writing these down. Sorry, Podsters.
Okay, no
Um,
worries.
and encourage, exposure, and allow. Yeah. So I noticed, by the way, so I replayed that December 15th version that we did.
Mhm.
And I felt like I was giving you feedback on your words without it being solicited. And I got a lot of unsolicited feedback over the past couple weeks, and we can talk about that on another episode.
Yes.
A lot, a lot. Um, so tell me a little bit about why you chose those three words.
Um, so I really like the word encourage. I think a lot about words, and you and I have talked about this where people will say, I help people, or I guide people, or I teach people. And I like the word encourage because I think no matter who you are and who you're working with, you're encouraging that person to move forward, to heal, to get ahead, to get smarter, to evolve in some way. And I like it for myself too. I feel like I need to encourage myself. I need to have my own encouraging voice about moving forward. And I think part of moving forward is exposure. And exposure can mean a number of things, right? It can mean that you're just getting your name out there, whether it's social media or meeting people or whatever it is. But it's also drawing attention to yourself, which we all struggle with, right? It depends on where your mindset is all the time. And um, so that's why I chose the word allow. Like if you're going to create this exposure, then you have to allow the things that happen because of it, right? Like for me, a lot of times I'm like, oh my God, um, what if my whole thing is that I would like to have a chat with Dax Shepard, everyone. If anyone has a contact, it's on a personal level. I would like to talk to Dax Shepard, but like, what if I keep exposing that, to people I meet and suddenly I get to meet Dax Shepard? Then I'm like, crap, what am I even going to say to Dax Shepard? Right? I have to allow that. I have to allow it if it comes to me. I mean, that's just
Right.
an example, of course, but
It's an excellent example because he's amazing. Um, yeah, those are when you were talking about those, when the word encourage, I was thinking about because I spent many years leading a team.
mhm.
encourage for me would apply to the team. So myself, but also the team. How am I going to encourage my team? How am I going to raise up my team? How am I going to lift my team? So that it's interesting because it's such a different perspective. Yeah. Did you
So
want to say something?
yes.
Beth is
So
raising her hand,
I
everybody.
just raised my hand, Podsters, because I didn't want to be rude and interrupt. As you were saying it, Nancy, I realized this is going to seem so simple, but it's like if you separate it into encourage, it's like you're instilling courage in somebody by encouraging them.
Wow. I
That's
like
yeah.
that.
Mic
I
drop. A
like
little bit
that.
of a mic drop there. I'll take it.
I mean, obviously. And so courage is a great segue to my word, which
Okay.
I may or may not choose by the end of this episode.
Okay.
So when I look back, so I really struggled with my word this year. And typically I embrace it. I pick a badass word. It's always an action word. I get a little bracelet made on it. I sometimes will do a vision board around it. For those of you who know about my Thrive story, Thrive was my word, I think 2 years ago, maybe. And I had this big, beautiful vision board in my office. I made it my screensaver, live, eat, breathe this word. And that year I was featured in Thrive magazine. Do we think that's a coincidence? I do
No.
not. No. So the key there is that we're going to talk in a minute about how to support that word and how to live that word and truly make it your true north. Anyway, so in the past I've had words like thrive and spark, ignite, courage. And I even went out to my community, Beth included, and I said, hey, these are the words I'm thinking about. And one of the words was reclaim that I was asking people to vote on because I feel like I lost a lot of control last year. And there were a lot of things that happened that I didn't feel in control of, which is fine. It's, part of life. But even a word like reclaim, these action words were causing a reaction in me. All of these words, all of them. Fearless is a word that I love. And I love it when people use that word to describe me. I'm like, oh, maybe it'll be fearless. And I'm like, no, like I don't want an action word. I am tired of the action words. For me, I need something that speaks to ease, that speaks to allowing, that speaks to intention. I might actually, intention is like in the top three now. When Beth and I recorded this podcast a couple of weeks ago, one of my words was gonna, I knew I couldn't use it, but I'm like, what about purge? Like, and and then another word was gonna be, how about no? And then I was gonna say no, KNOW as a play on no, and I still might use that word. But anyway, my point is, as I went through these last couple of weeks and got quiet, I realize that yes, I'm inherently, there will be action no matter what I do. It's who I am. What I need right now is less action. What I need right now is more inaction. And that's more time for myself, more time for the rituals that help me thrive, more time, better boundaries, whatever the case may be. So, Podstars, I'm still struggling. I'm not struggling, but I'm still trying to choose my word. I like intention
Mm-hmm.
because or intentional
Mm-hmm.
because I want to be more intentional with my time. I want to be more intentional with my work. And what am I doing? Am I throwing a bunch of spaghetti up against the wall and seeing what sticks, or am I being intentional about my
Mm-hmm.
strategies and whatnot? I want to be intentional in my relationships. I don't know if you all caught the friendship episode. I just had it's a couple episodes ago, and I just had somebody this morning send me a note asking if I wanted to get together. And I'm like, I want to be intentional in my relationship. I know, awful, right?
Oh, oh God.
Okay, right. So, but I don't like, I'm not, I don't right now. And maybe I will in a couple months. In 2022, I would have done it. I would have made the plans. I would have resented it. I would have had that horrible energy. So I want to be more intentional with my relationships, as somewhat offensive as that may sound to some people. So, whoops. So, um, that's where I'm at. So, Beth, what do you think? Help me choose my word.
So I actually really like intention, and you took it to where I was going to go. Is that you and I think have talked quite a bit offline and on the podcast about scheduling things we didn't want to schedule, right? And feeling overscheduled, especially before the pandemic. And I was like that too, go, go, go. And there was an intention behind it. It was like, yeah, I have a free night. I can fill it with something else. And it was just constant, who can I meet? Where can I go? What can I eat? Where, all kinds of stuff. And now it's like, wait a second. I really kind of like my downtime at home at the end of the workday, and I don't want to go anywhere. Anyway, I digress. But so I do think intention is about strategic choice. So I do
I like
like.
strategic choice.
Mm-hmm.
I like choices too. Yeah. I love it. This is going to sound a little strange, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I ran that word by Danny. For those of you who don't know, Danny is my husband. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, yeah, I like it. And he knows me better than anyone.
Oh,
So
that's
it's interesting. I'm like, okay, well, what other, and he's like, let me think about it. He can't think of a word. He can't think of one for himself, by the way. So I'm like, okay, well, you can't even think of one for yourself. So maybe I'll just go with intentional or intention. I like strategic choices, and that is part of it. So I was telling Beth earlier, Podsters, that New Year's Day and New Year's Eve, by the way, I woke up and there was rain. It was very rainy here, and there was rain coming down on the skylight. I have a skylight in my bedroom, which is fantastic. And it brought me so much peace and so much joy. And I just laid there like an extra 20 minutes in bed listening to this rain. And I remember thinking to myself, is it really that simple? Like, if this was 2 weeks ago, I would have been like, oh, it's raining. I would have hopped out of bed and I would have done whatever and kept going. So I intentionally stayed in bed and then I intentionally did nothing all day, which is what I needed. So I think intention or thoughtfulness or purposeful, I don't love purposeful because I think it's a little, I know my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think purposeful. So that's where I'm at. So we shall see. It might be intentional. It might be renew. I doubt it. Even renew is too much of an action word for me. It might be ease, easy.
I
I
like
don't know.
these.
You
I
like
like
ease?
these. These is a classic.
And what's interesting is my resistance to these words. I'm like,
Yes.
I can't have ease be my word of the year. I'm a firecracker. I'm a go-getter. I'm a very busy executive, blah, 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 blah. Like maybe not this year, which is a great segue to what we're going to talk about next week.
Yes. And I also think that all those things you just listed about yourself, when you're in the right headspace, they do come to you with ease because it is who you are. It's when things get in the way of that you might have a challenge with it,
I
right?
like that. Yeah. Yeah. I thought about easy, a week ago maybe, and I'm like, why am I making it so hard? It should be
Mhm.
easy. Yeah. So, more to follow on that,
Yeah. All
people.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I actually
So,
started
whoop,
to write a blog on my words. So when it's finished, maybe next time I'll put the link to that in our show notes. I won't have it
as you
now.
should.
Okay. All
Speaking
right.
of speaking of writing a blog, how do you create your content consistently?
That would be a great question if I actually did it. So here's this big secret, right? I like if I sit down to write, I can write because I'm a writer, but like anybody else, I struggle with that. Um, but I do it. I think a lot of it is there's 50 different systems out there, 50 different people will tell you things, and you have to find the way that's best for you. Like I work with a virtual assistant, as you know, and I try to at least do something every day and she posts it for me. If I can get ahead, I get ahead. But for a long time, I beat myself up because I couldn't get ahead. And I was like, this is too hard for me to get ahead. It's not who I am. And just like you and I with the podcast are like, we don't want to record too far in advance because we want to be current. I also want to be current. My mind is constantly, it's like a, a pot of popcorn. Like the ideas sometimes are just all over the place. And if I book too far out, I can't capture them and use
Yep.
them appropriately. So
Do you not have some kind of a workshop happening where people can write their content?
I do. You are correct.
Right.
So
Right.
there's the other trick, right? If we create a workshop for others, we follow the workshop, right? We test it out before we're teaching
Right.
it to other people. So I do. I have a workshop coming on the 18th. It's a 3-hour workshop where you will figure out what you want to write about, and I will help you with get your creative juices flowing so that you can come up with some really original content instead of writing the same old boring blah, blah, blah. So yes.
And there's a link to that in the show notes, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Um, I realized because I was getting ready to sign off, we didn't talk about word of the month.
Oh,
And
right.
this
Let's do
is
it.
this is huge. So because both Beth and I, when we got back together after our 2-week hiatus, were hot on a word of the month. And I started to do this and then I read about it. So I do a new journal every month. I make my own journal. I print it at FedEx. I do a little kind of cute, fun pictures on the front just to make it fun. And what I noticed was every month I was picking a different word for how I wanted to feel that month. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why not do a word of the month? And because I need to rest, I know I need to rest in January, February, and March. And I've designed that into my business, and that's great. Well, in January and February, March is International Women's Day, so that's like my Super Bowl, so I will not be resting, but that's all good. Um, so I'm like, maybe I'll do a word of the month. And then I was reading about word choosing and stuff like that, and knew a lot of people are recommending that you choose one word every month. So for
Mm.
January, it's funny. This is like I just thought of this a few days ago. My word for January is actually 3 words. It's mise en place. Are you familiar with this?
I've heard of it.
Mise,
I can't remember what
yeah.
it is.
It's a French term. It's actually three
Right.
words, mise en place. And it's for those of you who are chefs. It's the concept of everything in its place is the literal
Mm.
translation. So when you go to cook a meal, even if it's not complex, you have all the prep done ahead of time. So if
Yes.
there's chopped peppers, then you have the chopped peppers already there. If you need flour, the flour's already measured out. And it is a much more effective way to cook. And you enjoy the process because you're not running around trying to gather all the ingredients. They're all there. So for January, my mantra is mise en place. I'm getting my stuff together. I'm getting my systems together. I'm organizing things, which I know a lot of people are doing, and I'm doing it every day, and I'm living it every day. And so far, it's been a whole 2 days, 3 days by the time
Woohoo!
everybody hears this. It's going awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. And then in February, I would like some more joy. We're traveling a lot this year.
Uh-huh.
Personal travel. January, February, we're traveling. April, we're traveling. June, we have a big trip. So that's what I think these words will help kind of stay focused and stay
Nice.
present,
Very good.
which I think is great. So, your thoughts on word of the month?
I think that's good. I think that's fun.
I
I
like
think
it.
I think it would be hard for me personally, but I think I would
Really?
forget. I think I would forget that I had to come up with the word, to be honest. Isn't that horrible?
What about would you ever look backward and do like what was the best word to describe last month? Did you ever do that?
I guess. Yeah, I would really have to put some thought into that, but that would
Yeah.
be good, right? Because, well, that ties into other things we could talk about, but we're not gonna. All
We're
right.
not going to today, but we will next week, right?
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So, did we cover everything?
I think so, right? We talked about the word, what it
We
does
did.
for you,
Yep.
right? Keeps you on
How to
track,
live it. Oh, no,
right?
how to live it. So, I do a vision board and/or I write it every day in the top page of my journal. How do you keep your word present, like in top of
I
mind?
usually have it on my wall somewhere where I can see the words all the time so that when I
Mhm.
get frazzled, I can look up and be like, oh, that's what I'm doing. That's the way I'm traveling this year. Yeah.
I'm not doing a bracelet this year. It's too much pressure. I feel like it's too
Don't do it.
pressury. Nope, not doing it. And next week we're going to talk about what are we like I we're going to talk about how to use some of these rituals, some words, how to use words and your rituals to uh I'm looking for my notes here on how we described it. To up when you're caught in the spiral.
Yep. Yep. How
Yep.
to avoid getting caught in the spiral. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Beth.
Yep.
And then later on this month, we're going to talk about how to advocate for yourself and the power of words when you're advocating for yourself, and how to stop giving away your value. And we are going to really hone in on the power of your why, which in January we think is incredibly appropriate,
Yes.
and how your why drives everything. And understanding your why could get very uncomfortable. But once you do that, man, the truth shall set you free.
Right. Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
So the call to action, Podsters, if you are choosing a word, we'd love to hear what it is. LinkedIn, Instagram. We're on the Twitch now, apparently. We're on Twitch.
Stitcher.
Stitcher. Sorry.
Yep. That's okay.
We're on Stitcher.
We're on all of it.
We're on all of it. Let us know. I'll tell you, Beth, I had 2 people last week out of the blue that I haven't spoken to in a very long time tell me they love the podcast. And I'm like, oh my God, please, please, please let us know if you're listening. We don't see who's listening. And it brings us a lot of joy to hear that you are finding value in what we're talking about. So please let us know if you're enjoying the podcast and you have time to give us a review on Apple. That would be awesome. That elevates the program, which means it reaches more people so we can spread the message even more.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. And with that, we say
sayonara.
Adios. See you next week.
Bye.
That's a wrap on another episode of Unmute Yourself, the podcast. We hope you found value in today's podcast. We hope you were able to take a little time for yourself and perhaps think about how you're showing up.
And thank you for all of the great feedback we've been receiving. We'd love to hear more from you about what you think, the tactics you're using every day to speak up, and anything else you'd like to hear about on future episodes of Unmute Yourself, the podcast. You can contact us through our websites. Nancy can be found at nancymedoff.com, and Beth can be found at that'saspade.com. Or you can email us at unmuteyourselfthepodcast, all one word, at gmail.com.
We will see you next week, and until then, keep speaking up.